From the newest hunter, Herztier, to the oldest identity switch in the game, Nightmare, and even the highly anticipated Galatea, there have been many characters in Identity 5 who have received or will receive an identity switch. The identity switch has existed in the game since as early as 2021, and this time I kind of want to take you through every confirmed and officially released identity switch character in the game. I won't be covering characters who are still being speculated to receive one. Maybe that's something for another day when I'm not busy or whatever. Also, we'll cover several characters in this video, but it won't be a deep dive into each of them because otherwise this video would take forever. Let's go. At its core, Identity Switch is a mechanism, or simply a feature, that allows a character to have multiple gameplay roles based on whatever their lore is. In short, it allows one story character to play two different gameplay characters. For example, one certain character, Orpheus, has an identity switch that allows him to be playable as both a hunter and a survivor. It seems to me that not every character in this game receives an identity switch, even if many fans want them to. Usually, the characters who receive an identity switch have lore that supports the idea. For example, Norton received an identity switch because Alice hallucinates him as a monster, while Luchino received one because of his experiments with reptiles, human biology, and the involvement of a supernatural being. On the other hand, Emily does not, or rather should not, receive an identity switch. Her story is already over, and her lore simply doesn't support the idea of her receiving an alternate identity. Typically, characters who have received an identity switch have a deformed shadow in their 5th birthday portrait. We've already seen this with Halabaloo, Melly, and others. Now you might be wondering, what's the story behind each character's identity switch? Why them? Why did they receive one? Well, lore-wise, there are several factors that can lead to an identity switch. It can happen because of hallucinations, self-perception, supernatural curses, scientific experiments, or even dormant memories. We'll go through these different explanations as we look at each character. As one of the main characters in the game, it isn't really surprising for Orpheus to receive an identity switch. Apparently, since the very beginning of the game, there have been people theorizing that Orpheus was actually the villain of the story. And because of that, the theory of Orpheus having an identity switch has been around for quite some time as well. This theory eventually became reality during the time of Reunion, when it became clear that the whole mana game was essentially an experiment designed to test a certain drug. Orpheus was strongly believed, or depending on how you interpret the story, almost confirmed, to be the one conducting the entire experiment. In the game, Orpheus's identity switch, Nightmare, resembles either a raven or a plague doctor from the Dark Ages, or perhaps both. Essentially, the design of Nightmare that appeared in the game came from how Alice sees Orpheus during the Cage of Yesteryear event. After discovering some clues about what happened at the manor, there is a scene where Alice returns to the main hall and sees Orpheus slowly turning into Nightmare. From this scene, we can reasonably say that the Nightmare we see today is the same Nightmare seen from Alice's perspective. As for why she hallucinates him as such a creature, I have yet to find a definitive answer. A video from the developers mentioned that Alice's visualization of the hunter represents her greatest fears, although I couldn't find any concrete explanation for exactly why Orpheus appears as Nightmare. Further explanation about Nightmare, however, can be found in one of his S-tier skins, Abyss. This skin, which connects with another skin for Orpheus called Hollow, gives us some hints about how Nightmare was born. In short, Orpheus, who once lived peacefully in Elitist Manor alongside his childhood friend Alice, experienced a tragic event when the manor was raided. That experience caused his innocent side to disappear, leaving behind a desire to recreate the happiness he once had, even though that happiness had already been lost. Like I said, I won't be doing a deep dive into this, but that's basically the gist of how Nightmare came to be. You can check out the full story in the Season 18 Essence 3 and Season 19 Essence 1 stories for more details. Or you can check my previous video about Orpheus. Fans Fans already knew that Melly was going to receive an identity switch years ago based on what the developers said during a Q&A session back in 2022. If we look into her deduction quests and design notes, the Hunter Queen Bee was born from the unjust treatment Melly experienced during her days as a researcher's wife. Originally a beekeeper, Melly's talent was discovered by a renowned biologist named Joshua Plinius. She became his assistant and later on his wife. Melly turned out to be a talented researcher herself, and she wanted to be recognized as one just like her husband. Unfortunately for her, things didn't happen that way. She was constantly cast aside as nothing more than Joshua's assistant. She remained in his shadow, never receiving recognition for her own talent. Even worse, it's hinted that Joshua only saw Melly as an asset that could further boost his reputation. Eventually, Melly snapped. After a certain incident at the apiary, Melly decided that she had enough and secretly finished Joshua. In terms of the lore, the transformation from the innocent Melly into this more dangerous version of herself is what fueled her identity switch, from an entomologist into a monstrous insect. As for the design, we can see Melly's hunter form during the Cage of Yesteryear event, in which Alice sees Melly as a monstrous bee after investigating the manor. Further details about Melly's overall story can be found in the affection system, as well as the main story events such as Ashes of Memory and Cage of Yesteryear. There are also smaller details scattered throughout other events, such as the Christmas event and Autumn in the Dunes. Norton's father was a coal miner, who died when Norton was still very young, so he had to struggle for his life from an early age, possibly as young as 7 years old. He eventually followed his father's path and became a coal miner himself. The job was practically a life sentence during the Victorian era. The working conditions for coal miners were harsh and unrewarding, and they were considered to be among the lowest classes of society. Norton didn't want to remain a miner forever, so he tried desperately to escape from the depths of the mine. He worked harder than everyone else, endured the hostility of those around him, and yet, no matter how hard he tried, poverty continued to follow him. Eventually, Norton decided to escape the mine and poverty once and for all. By using an extreme method, he would try to mine gold. To do so, Norton befriended an old friend of his father, Benny the Iron Chisel, who possessed a map showing several mines believed to contain valuable gold deposits. Pretending to be an empathetic young man, Norton eventually took the map from Benny and went searching for the gold on his own. This infuriated Benny, whose health had already been severely damaged by a disease known as black lung. He eventually died in anger. Meanwhile, Norton discovered that almost none of the mines contained any gold. At the last mine on the list, Norton deliberately blew up the cave to open a path inside. The explosion killed all the other miners, leaving Norton as the only survivor. The design notes specifically mention that Fool's Gold rose from this explosion. Symbolically, I think this means that Fool's Gold was born from Norton's desperate desire to escape poverty. Alice first saw Norton as Fool's Gold when she explored the Forest of No Return. He appeared that way in Alice's eyes because of the drug that had been administered to her. That's basically the gist of Norton's story. If you want to look deeper into it, you can read through his backstory yourself or look for more clues in the affection system. I put some videos about Norton as well if you want to check them out. Memory is probably the most unique identity switch currently available in the game. While most identity switches allow a character to become the opposing faction, Alice is the only character whose identity switch is essentially survivor to survivor. Her identity switch also resembles Alice when she was a little girl. But what's even more interesting is that the lore of memory is completely different from Alice herself, and there's an interesting explanation for this. When Alice was little, she lived peacefully in the Oletus Manor with her family, as well as a childhood friend whom she called Orphe or Orpheus. One day, the manor was raided by bandits, leaving many people dead, including both of Alice's parents. After that, Alice was sent to an orphanage. Orpheus, who was very close to Alice and possibly the person closest to her at that point, tried to adopt her from the orphanage. However, the orphanage's director denied his request, saying that they would rather release Alice to her blood relatives. Sometime later, the orphanage caught on fire and burned down. Orpheus was devastated by the news. He couldn't find out what had happened to Alice or where she had gone. All that remained in Orpheus's mind was the image of a little girl, and from that memory, the little girl was born. Technically, the little girl is Alice, but at the same time, she isn't really Alice anymore. She is what remains of Alice inside Orpheus's memory, and that's why her name in the game is simply Memory. I've probably talked about Herztier many times already, so I'll keep this one relatively short. The hunter version of Emil is essentially a representation of what Emil became once his medication could no longer suppress his manic episodes. Emil experienced an extremely difficult life. Born into an impoverished family as the youngest son, he was sold to a certain dog owner who ran a dog-fighting ring when he was still very young. He was forced to beg on the streets and was later forced to fight the dogs himself as part of the show. Years of enduring this kind of hardship made Emil question whether he should even be living as a human being or as something else entirely. He eventually ended up in an asylum where he met a certain doctor named Ada Mesmer who treated him with kindness. Through her experimental hypnotherapy medication, Emil slowly regained his humanity, and he continued receiving medication from Ada. However, for an unknown reason, the medication gradually stopped working. By the 3rd year after they met, the medication was technically failed. Ada then tried to bring Emil to Orpheus Manor as a desperate attempt to help him. But once they arrived, the experimental medication affected his emotions and turned him into an aggressive being. The hunter version of Emil, whose appearance resembles a rabid dog or wolf, may therefore be a personification of this aggressive side of him, a result of both his past and the medication he received at the manor. Joker was once the star of a certain circus called Halabaloo. Although he became a star, it was in a way that he himself probably never wanted. Joker had been at the circus since he was very young, possibly after being abandoned by his parents or sold to the circus. The circus owner, Bernard, saw him as one of his valuable assets and cast him as a weeping clown. Initially, Joker was a shining star, but his popularity began to fade after a certain couple joined the circus. The woman, Natalie, joined as an animal tamer, while the man, Sergi, performed as a smiling clown, known as Smiley Face. Sergi quickly overshadowed Joker, and this made Joker's already existing inferiority complex to be worse. Joker eventually developed feelings for Natalie. One day, he discovered several scars on her back. Believing that the scars had been caused by Sergi abusing her, Joker gathered enough courage to confront him. But Sergi then retaliated by adding dangerous chemicals to Joker's makeup, permanently scarring his face and making him unable to perform forever. Joker felt as if his entire world had been destroyed by Sergi, so he retaliated. He took things to an entirely different level, though, as he went on a rampage through the circus, killing Sergi and several others. The circus eventually closed down. Joker escaped all allegations after faking his death. The police suspected him to be dead along with the circus, but a certain circus member, Mike Norton, became highly suspicious of it and decided to look for the truth himself. Joker later went to Orpheus Manor after receiving an invitation and reunited with Natalie, who was now going by the name Margaretha. There, Joker was mistaken for Sergi several times. After a certain dinner, Margaretha, who was under the influence of the manor's drugs, mistook Joker for a monstrous version of Sergi. Later on, after Joker's involvement in the Halabaloo tragedy was exposed, Margaretha once again perceived him as her worst nightmare Sergi, or rather, a monstrous Sergi. Halabaloo is one of the more unique cases in the whole identity switch system because apparently he was born from Mike's own perception of the circus he grew up in. In fact, it seems that nobody else sees the Halabaloo physically. Only Mike sees it as it comes from his inner sorrow. Mike was an orphan who got adopted by a certain man named Bernard. Bernard owned a circus called Halabaloo, and Mike eventually grew up to become one of the circus's stars. Mike idolized Bernard so much that he saw him as a father. The other performers such as Murrow, Joker, Violetta, Sergi, and Natalie were also seen by Mike as his own family. In his mind, the circus was his home, and everyone there was his family. Unfortunately, the Halabaloo circus crumbled after a mass murder took place there, killing Bernard and several others. The circus closed after that, but for Mike, however, the circus never really disappeared. It lived forever in his heart, and he simply wasn't ready to accept that it was gone. As a result, the sorrow in his heart and his distorted perception of the circus eventually embodied themselves into something else: the Halabaloo. The design notes for Halabaloo especially emphasize this idea. Parts of his body represent different parts of the circus that had already fallen apart. For example, the rags hanging over Halabaloo's shoulder are said to represent the circus's roof. So in a way, Halabaloo isn't simply a monster, he's the physical manifestation of a circus that Mike refused to let disappear. As for what eventually happened to Mike, his story continued in the closing night event. It's a pretty interesting story, so I'd recommend checking it out yourself if you haven't already. Luchino's identity switch, the evil reptilian, comes with a rather interesting story. Unlike some of the other identity switches we've talked about, the evil reptilian isn't a hallucination, a memory, or some kind of psychological manifestation. He's real. The evil reptilian is Luchino after physically transforming into a beast for a reason that is quite baffling, yet interesting. His lore is rather long, but I'll try to keep this short and focus only on the important parts. Came from southern Italy, Luchino Dirus was considered a genius. He studied reptiles and amphibians at university, and even finished his studies in roughly half the time normally required. His interest in lizards, particularly venomous lizards, eventually took his research to another level. He would test the venom of the lizards he experimented on with rats before eventually testing it on humans, and that included himself. One day, a janitor named Darren Berglund told Luchino that he had found a strange snake near his mother's window. According to Darren, the snake was so peculiar that it could apparently grow 4 limbs within 10 days. It sounds like complete BS, but Luchino believed him anyway. Luchino later received an invitation from a fellow researcher named Dukan Thompson to study a certain unusual lizard. Turned out, it was the same creature Darren had been talking about. Luchino and Thompson were already at odds with each other because of a previous business failure and their different approaches to research. Nevertheless, Luchino agreed to join the study. Eventually, Thompson concluded that the reptile was simply a normal but malformed creature. Luchino, however, disagreed, and he continued researching it. As usual, Luchino decided to let the lizard bite him after seeing that its bite had caused nothing unusual in a laboratory rat. This time, however, something went very differently. The wound began developing a hard scale. Luchino also became more sensitive to smells, while his stamina seemed to increase. In short, Luchino was slowly transforming into a lizard. His transformation was eventually completed after he arrived at the manor and participated in Games 6A and 6B. It is widely believed that the strange lizard that bit Luchino was actually Darren's brother, Volker, who had somehow been cursed by Yidra. That's a rather massive story by itself, so I won't get into it here. What I want to point out is that Luchino's identity switch isn't actually a hallucination. The evil reptilian is Luchino after completing his physical transformation. It's the same Luchino, which is not a hallucination created by someone else, nor a manifestation of a concept, and neither a memory of someone else. Unlike the characters we've discussed so far, Galatea's identity switch hasn't been released yet, though it has actually been confirmed by the developers. We just don't know when it's coming or exactly what form it will take. Born into the Claude family, which is a family of artists, Galatea was expected to continue the family's artistic tradition. Because of that, she was taught sculpture from a young age, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. Her teacher even brought her to Florence so she could further develop her skills. Unfortunately, it was discovered that Galatea had dwarfism, which affected both her physical and mental well-being. People around her began mocking her appearance and treating her like a child, and these experiences eventually affected her creativity. She would later struggle to produce sculptures of the quality she was capable of. One day, a certain manor owner hired her to restore several statues at his residence. Galatea accepted the job. Whatever happened at that manor remains a mystery, but after returning from there, something seemed to have changed. The experience filled Galatea with new ideas and an incredible burst of creativity. Suddenly, she was able to produce high-quality sculptures again, making her family proud. But something else had changed. After returning from the manor, Galatea began behaving strangely. She would spend hours with the sculptures she created, treating them as if they were real human beings. She became so obsessed with them that she would sometimes spend hours without eating or drinking. Her family became increasingly worried about her. Eventually, her father snapped and threw one of her sculptures off the balcony. To his surprise, Galatea jumped after it. She survived, but the fall left her paralyzed. Her family, believing that she was mentally ill, sent her to an asylum, but her condition didn't improve. She was eventually placed in a special ward, where only a female nurse was assigned to take care of her. One day, the nurse failed to show up. A search was conducted, and it was eventually discovered that Galatea had disappeared from the asylum. It was believed that she had killed the nurse and carved her body into a statue. Now, with the recent revelation of Game Zero, several theories have emerged about what actually happened to Galatea during her visit to the manor. We know that Galatea was one of the participants in Game Zero. One theory suggests that the Galatea participating in Game Zero is the version who will eventually receive an identity switch. This version of Galatea can still walk and run because she hasn't been paralyzed yet. As for the wheelchair-bound Galatea we've known for years, some people believe that she participated in another game after Game Zero. Of course, that's only one of several theories surrounding Galatea's potential identity switch. There are plenty of other interpretations floating around, which is understandable considering how little official information we currently have. For now, I'll leave the speculation there. For now, those are all the released identity switches, along with the ones officially confirmed to be coming. There are still several characters who are speculated to receive one in the future. One of the biggest reasons behind these theories is the deformed shadow that appears in some characters' 5th birthday portraits. We've already seen this pattern with characters who eventually received identity switches. That's the reason why fans have started looking at characters such as Vera, Robbie, Martha, and several others. Aside from them, there are also characters who are speculated to receive an identity switch simply because their lore could support it, such as Aesop and Anne. But again, I'm not going to go through all of them today, otherwise this video would become ridiculously long. I'll probably save that topic for another video whenever I'm free. Feel free to share what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a good day.